and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 274, and today's date is January 27th, 2014, and the title of this episode is Alert, High Probability of a False Flag Event. And what do we know? Well, we know there are terrorist warnings about Sochi. There's a travel advisory in effect for all U.S. people heading to Sochi. We understand there are warships in the Black Sea ready to evacuate the athletes and the U.S. people just in case there is a terrorist threat. And there are reports of the Black Widow running around. They're already inside the Olympic perimeter, and they cannot track them. They don't know where they are, and this is continually building and building and building. And there are now rumblings about the Super Bowl, saying that they've been smuggling in chemical weapons inside the CO2 tanks that work the soft drink machines. There's also explosives around the stadium to trap the people inside. And again, we don't know if this is true. This is what people are saying. This is what we've been hearing. These are all potential false flags. And we are going to get into this further, and there's one other thing that I want to discuss at the end of this report about the false flags, about nuclear dirty bombs, and we will get into that a little bit later. But let's get into the economic collapse news. We're going to head out to Argentina, and right now we're seeing a global reset in that country. Like I said in my other report, all currencies are going to be devalued, or depending on the country's economic wealth. And right now in Argentina, they're doing a rapid devaluation of the official peso, the Argentine peso, and inflation right now is around 25%, but the official number is about half of this. They're saying it's around 12.5% or so, and people are going to see inflation occur. It's going to get worse as time goes on because they're going to continually to devalue the currency. People are going to get out of it, and they're going to take their pesos, trade them in for gold, trade them in for US dollars, and people will be dumping the peso. Now we have to remember back in this was probably around the summertime, September, October, going forward, when the President of the United States and the President of the Eurozone, the President of France, of Spain, of all these countries, they were all out there using propaganda that the economy was in a recovery, everything is getting better. The President of France was stating like, yes, we're out of it, we're coming out of the whole thing, it's fantastic. Well, that isn't really true. And we all knew it was true because whatever the government officials say, it is always the opposite. If they're telling you we're in a recovery and things are great, they don't need to tell you this. You would feel it. You would know it. People would be getting jobs. This is how you know. When they have to come out and tell you, just like the President Obama was campaigning in August, and now they have Biden out there running around saying that, we're in a recovery. You wouldn't have to say the housing is in a recovery. You wouldn't have to say the economy is in a recovery, that people are getting jobs. People would know it because guess what? They would be getting jobs, and the unemployment numbers would be going down using non-manipulated statistics. But what are we seeing? Unemployment in France hitting all-time new highs. Unemployment in Spain hitting all-time new highs. Everywhere you look, unemployment is going up. And right now, for the 30th of the last 32 months, French joblessness increased. French unemployment is at an all-time record high. And right now, and of course they were talking about the European recovery, how great it is. Well, not so great. The earnings growth expectations have collapsed from 9% at the start of December to 0. Things are not going well at all. Now, today I saw headlines out there saying Caterpillar posts stronger than expected fourth quarter profits. Everyone's cheering. The market started to go up a little bit, and then, of course, it ended in the red. The plunge protection team, the high-frequency trading, they just couldn't get it to where they wanted it, but they got it to at least close to 0 right there. But what Caterpillar actually did, sales didn't increase. All they did was lay off in the fourth quarter. They laid off 13,000 people and closed plants to make it seem like they were doing better, but they're not. It's almost like Sears and J.C. Penney's and all these retail stores. They are closing stores because the sales aren't there. So what does Caterpillar do? They have to do the same thing. They have to let all these people go, close plants because the sales aren't there. It's an illusion, and they're all rallying, saying this is fantastic. It's absolutely ridiculous. Now, I talked about home sales a lot, and we know they're making us believe that we're in a housing recovery, things are getting better, prices are going up. But as I reported, mortgage companies are laying off thousands of people. People just don't have the money, and we have to use common sense. If unemployment is really between 30 or 37%, depending on the calculation you use, it's really not 6.7% because that is manipulated and it has completely changed since 1994, and many people, shadowstats.com has recalculated, and theirs is around 25%. A Wall Street exec calculated unemployment, and they're saying it's around 37%, and we can see it out there. I mean, there are no jobs out there whatsoever, and when people fall off of unemployment and they give up because there are no jobs, they bring the unemployment number down. This is what they do to keep the illusion going. And with the housing, okay, if we have unemployment high like this, people cannot purchase homes. This is why we see mortgage applications plunging by 66%. This is why we see back in September, we saw Wells Fargo, Citibank, JP Morgan Chase all laying off thousands and thousands of people because they knew they can't keep this up, so they had to let them go. Right now, new home sales are plunging by 7%. Even the new home construction, the foot traffic is dwindling. Sales are declining. Most of the houses being purchased right now are being done using cash, and I've mentioned this in many, many reports. It is hedge funds, an investment company, foreign investors. They buy them in cash. They don't care if they're empty or if they rent them. They want the prices to go up because they're trying to get the prices up, and then they're trying to unload them. But guess what? There is no one to unload them because, again, the Fed is still pumping in $85 billion a month. No, they have not tapered just yet. They are buying the toxic real estate from the banks. They are buying the treasuries. And we have to remember all those foreclosures and short sales of millions and millions and millions of homes. All these people are not buying homes. The youth can't find work. They can't make enough to move out of their parents' house. How do you think they are buying homes? So where are all these sales coming from? They aren't, and this is why you see new home sales plunging by 7%, and they're going to escalate as time goes on. And in the Northeast region, new houses that were sold, they only sold about 1,000 of them. This is going to be horrific. Real estate is going to come tumbling down. They're already doing 100% financing, no credit check. They already they introduced ARMs, adjustable rate mortgages, just like they did prior to 2008. Just try to get people in there. It is not working. They can't get this to work because people just don't have the money, the disposable income to do this. And this is why we saw a huge decline in retail sales during December, and in January it just got worse. This is why you see a huge amount of store closings in J.C. Penney, in Sears, Walmart's laying off from their Sam's Club, Target laying off there. This is why you are seeing, and a lot of the small chain stores are also closing a lot of stores, and they're going to be laying off a lot of people. They have been reporting that sales are terrible. They are horrific. There is no place to go but down because people just don't have the income to do it. And of course, they're trying to feed us that gold is not a good investment. That's why gold continually drops, because nobody really wants it and there's no demand. Well, let me ask you this. How come the gold mints around the world are working 24/7 to provide enough supply to meet demand on depressed prices? Global mints are manufacturing as fast as they can after a 28% drop in gold prices last year. Austria's mint is running 24 hours a day as global mints from the U.S. to Australia report climbing demand for gold coins, even while Goldman Sachs Group says this year's price rebound will end. Because people realize what is happening. Those people who are buying gold are doing so to protect their wealth. It is an insurance policy because they understand the dollar is collapsing. This is why the Royal Mint ran out of gold coins. This is why the U.S. Mint ran out of silver coins. This is why they can't keep up with demand. This is why gold is an illusion, this price, and this is the perfect time to purchase as it keeps going down, because what they're telling you, it is on sale, so go out and buy it. And we have to remember back, Goldman Sachs told us probably I think 2 times now that they were bearish on gold, and as soon as gold dropped, and this was happened in April or March or April, around that time frame, it dropped around $200. People got out of it, and guess who purchased it? Goldman Sachs. They continually do the same thing. They did this prior to 2008, where they told us the subprime securities are a great investment, they're AAA, go out and buy them, and they were betting against them because they knew they were toxic. They always, whenever they come out with something, always do the opposite of what they're saying. If they're telling you to sell and they're bearish, that means just wait for the price to drop and buy more. Because guess what? As soon as it dropped 200 points, it went right back where it was. So guess what? Do the opposite of what they are telling you to do. And right now, Lang said the market is very busy. We can't meet the demand even if we work overtime. This is how much. People want the gold so badly. It's unbelievable. Everywhere else in the world knows this except the United States. Now, Lagarde is out there and warning of a risk to global economic recovery. And of course they're warning this because they realize what's happening. The International Monetary Fund Managing Director warned Saturday of the risk posted to global economic recovery from the reduction of the U.S. Federal Reserve's monetary stimulus and falling prices in the Eurozone, because they see what is happening. Their recovery is fake. It's an illusion, and they know it. And right now, despite growing evidence, the global economy is faring better than it has for years. Christine Lagarde said policymakers around the world have to be alert to the potential repercussions from the Fed's tapering. And we know what is happening. The economy is completely falling apart. And we can see this by HSBC. They tried to implement some type of capital control where they wanted people to explain why they were taking out large cash withdrawals. You don't have to explain to anyone. It's your money. You put it in there, you can take it out. You don't have to explain to anyone what you need this for. And people were getting very upset. And of course, they're using the same thing that they always use. The governments always use this. We're doing it to protect you. Well, let me see. You accepted my money when I deposited it, and I want it back. Not a big deal. And the reason why they stopped with these capital controls and they said they weren't going to ask for an explanation is because they were very worried at this time that people were going to start taking their money out of the bank, and we were going to see some type of bank run, and people were going to start moving their money to other places. And this is why they realized what was happening, and they stopped this. Now, out in the UK, Lloyds Bank Group, they had a problem with their ATM machines, and people couldn't get their money out. And of course, they're blaming this on some type of glitch, which they always blame it on. And who knows, it could be setting up for the next cyber attack, because we're seeing so many glitches all over the place. We're seeing a glitch in the NASDAQ. We're seeing a glitch in the Chicago Mercantile. We're seeing glitches in the stock exchange. We are seeing glitches everywhere. Why? Because they have already put in the malware, the virus, whatever they're going to use, and it's causing the systems to act in a strange way at this time. And when the time comes, they will push the button and these systems will react the way they want them to. They will look like a cyber attack, and people will be like, whoa, what's happening here? Because we've seen cyber attacks going on right now with all the credit card cyber attacks, the accounts in Adobe, in Target, Neiman Marcus, and I think it was 7 other retail stores. We are seeing this all over the place. And it seems like we're having a mini cyber attack war now with China, with the U.S., with North Korea, and they're making us believe it's Syria, and we're seeing this happen and unfold right in front of our eyes right now. Now, the Bundesbank is coming out saying that, we might have to do the bail-ins. Just on the rich citizens, though. Don't worry about it. And they came out on Monday saying that the countries the countries that are about to go bankrupt should draw on the private wealth of their citizens through a one-off capital levy before asking other states for help. Now, we all know that the FDIC, the Bank of England, created the bail-in document. It is on the x22report.com site. If you go up to the tab that says Resources and Documents, it is there. And you have to go to the end of the document to see the part where they talk about the Dodd-Frank Act and the bail-ins, where it doesn't allow for bailouts anymore, so it is allowing for bail-ins. And this document was created in December of 2012. We saw the Cyprus test happen in February of 2013. And guess what? Cyprus is still under these capital controls. And then this document was taken, and the Eurozone now has their bail-in document. Switzerland has their bail-in document, Australia has theirs, and Canada has theirs. So we understand what they are planning for, because there's no need for the document if you're not going to do bail-ins. And they always prepare themselves for what is coming. And when I say they, it's the central bankers. And this goes on to say there is an equity shortfall that will have to be funded with incremental cash, which will have to come from somewhere. That somewhere is tax of the middle and upper classes, which are in possession of $74 trillion in financial assets in the banks, which in turn will have to be taxed at a blended rate of around 28.7%. How much you want to bet? It's going to be a little bit more than that, because they told Cyprus, we're only going to take around 8 to 10%, and they ended up taking 47% of their money. They pretty much stole the money from the people. And we are going to see this spread all across the private Western Central Bank countries, because they have been preparing for this, and they understand that they cannot do this because these countries and these banks are in debt, the banks are insolvent, and they cannot make it. Now, moving on to gun control, we understand in Connecticut we had that shooting in Sandy Hook, and this prompted the Obama administration to create all these executive orders and Dianne Feinstein to put in this gun bill, which is still pending in the Senate because the president, after it failed, asked the Senate to keep it there, and they did. And also John Kerry signed the UN Arms Treaty, and that is also pending in the Senate. And then they created these draconian gun control laws in Connecticut, in New York, in New Jersey, California, Colorado. Many states created these gun control laws. And right now, the people of Connecticut are not abiding by the law. They are not turning in their assault rifles. They are not producing them. And there is some kind of backlash going on right now. And this goes on to say that estimates of about 1 million firearm magazines that should have been registered under the law, but the state only reports around 40,000, just 4%. And the public is just ignoring the law. So what they're doing right now is saying, listen, if you bring in your weapons since it's after the deadline, we'll give you amnesty, and we'll make everything okay, because the citizens are showing disobedience to the law right now, because this law is unconstitutional. And what I find surprising is that Connecticut is the constitution state, and they have a law which goes against the Second Amendment. And I hate to say it, but any law that goes against the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, is null and void. Now, Florida, on the other hand, they are putting in legislation which will legislation that would prohibit any state agency from cooperating with enforcement of federal gun laws. Representative Dan Eagle introduced HB 733 on Monday. The Second Amendment Protection Act declares that no agent of the state or its political subdivision may participate with or assist federal agents in the enforcement of unconstitutional federal firearm laws or provide material support of any kind to federal agents in the enforcement of these laws. And we're seeing this happen in many, many states because these laws that the federal government are imposing on each one of these states is completely unconstitutional, and we, the people, decide what laws are constitutional or unconstitutional, and because we have given the contract to the government to follow, and they are not following what we have given them. And that's why in the document of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights says, we the people, and they're supposed to follow our law of the land, and they are not. Now, we understand out in the Middle East there are problems in Thailand, there are problems in the Ukraine. Thailand, the government there is backed by the U.S. government. The rebels are trying to get their country back and push out the private Western Central Bank and the U.S. government. In the Ukraine, it's actually the opposite. The Ukraine signed a deal with Russia, decided not to go with the EU, and the rebels of the Ukraine, or the people of the Ukraine, are being pushed by the United States, the central bankers, to overthrow the government of Ukraine. And this is what's happening right now. And protesters received a text message from the government that is perfectly frightening. The text message was unsigned, and what it says was, "Dear subscriber, you are registered as a participant in a mass disturbance." And right now, the Kiev phone company denied sending it, and of course, the text message was unsigned. And right now, the Kiev phone company is saying they were hacked into, and we know what is happening right now. We know these central bankers, the U.S. government, Israel, Saudi Arabia, all these countries that are aligned with the central banking are able to hack into these systems. They planted this text message, and they are pushing the protesters, further and further to overthrow the Ukrainian government, because they want the Ukraine under the private Western central bankers. They want the strategic location of the Ukraine, which is on the border of the Black Sea and borders Russia, and they want the Ukraine to join NATO. And this is why this is happening right now. Now, of course, John Kerry is out there saying the U.S. will stand with the people of Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry on Friday reiterated the United States support for Ukrainian protesters and said Washington is working with its allies and top officials in Kiev to halt the violence between security forces and government opponents. No, they're not. They're the ones who are fanning the flame and continually pushing the protesters forward. And this goes on to say, we will stand with the people of the Ukraine, and we do not agree with the way the Ukraine government is handling the protesters and hurting them. But if we have to think about this, in Thailand, it is completely opposite. We have them beating down the rebels there. Wait a minute. In the Middle East, where in Lebanon, Libya, Iraq, Yemen, they're doing drone strikes on the rebels there. Wherever the U.S. government and the central bankers are not in control, they are for the government. If they do not have power in the government, they are on the opposite side supporting the rebels. This is how it's playing out all over the world. It's the same in Sudan. It's the same in Mali, Central Africa. It is the same in all the Middle Eastern countries I just mentioned. It's the same in Thailand, Ukraine. It depends on who has control. Is there a private Western central bank in the country? Are they using the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency? If they are on the government side. If they are not, they are on the opposite side. So basically, they talk on both sides of their mouths. Now, when the minister of the Ukraine was going to call for a state of emergency, all of a sudden the Ukraine currency plunged. It started to go down, and right now the Ukrainian government is saying that they have that there are no plans to impose a state of emergency at this time. And the rioting and the protesting is definitely getting worse in all of these countries. The people are fighting back, especially in the Middle East, where they have bigger and bigger factions of people coming together, fighting the governments to take their countries back. And the United States, the central bankers, and other private Western central bank nations are preparing to go to war with these people and to help these governments, because they have to protect the Western central banks and the U.S. dollar, the U.S. dollar as the reserve currency, selling their natural resources. Now, we understand that the U.S. has a huge footprint in the Mediterranean, and right now Russia and China are signaling the West as they do their Mediterranean drills. China and Russia are solidifying their strategic partnership and signaling the West from the Mediterranean Sea. China is going to permanently settle there, building up its military presence in tandem with Russia to balance out NATO forces. And we can see what is happening now. Everyone is positioning themselves. Everyone is getting ready for what is going to be World War III. We're already fighting a war. We're already fighting a war with China in Africa, in the Middle East. Japan is already arguing in the Pacific. We already have the pivot to the Pacific right now, where we have 60% of our nuclear subs out in that region. We already have 9 out of the 11 aircraft carriers out in that region, moving a base to a different location in Japan to give them more sophisticated weapons like the Global Hawk drone system. We have a permanent missile base in Guam. We have the missile shield running from Poland to Romania. And again, we can see all of this forming, and every single country is preparing and strategically moving their military assets to be ready for what is coming. Now, of course, the United States, the central bankers, want to stay in Afghanistan because that borders Iran, and it also borders the border states of Russia, and also they have natural resources like copper. The Chinese are also in Afghanistan, and the U.S. wants to keep troops in there, and they're not going to leave. But right now they're having a problem with President Karzai. He will not sign the agreement because what he really wants, he wants something different than what the U.S. wants. And what he is saying, he keeps insisting that the U.S. must stop military operations and airstrikes on Afghan villages and homes, initiate peace talks with the Taliban, and release Afghan Taliban prisoners from Guantanamo prison. If the U.S. wants the bilateral security agreement to be signed, then it should accept our conditions. If not, they can leave any time, and Afghans can go without foreigners. But again, the U.S. does not want to leave. They want to continually do these night raids into people's homes. And it's funny because the United States military is out there going into people's homes without permission. And here in the United States, the people of the United States have the rights where they cannot just come into their homes without some type of warrant or something like that. But in other countries, we are doing it to those people. And of course, I know in the United States it is eroding. We see all the police just knocking down doors and going into the people's homes without warrants, without cause, without anything. And of course our rights, which cannot be taken away, but the government is trying to convince people that they can take them away. And it's, the president of Afghanistan wants this to stop because most of the people that are going in there have nothing to do with anything. They're innocent. Just like the drone strikes in Yemen and in Iraq and Lebanon and Libya, they're striking people that have nothing to do with anything. You have to think of yourself. If you're living in an apartment building and you're on the second floor and there you see a drone heading to you because they believe there is some type of terrorist on the fourth floor and they bomb the apartment building, that is absolutely ridiculous. And of course, they don't have proof. They don't have anything. They're just killing people for absolutely no reason. And a lot of innocent people are dying. Now, to help out the Iraqis, also the Libyans, in Lebanon, the U.S., the central bankers realize that they can't lose control of the Middle East. If they do, and I mentioned this many, many times, these countries will no longer use the US dollar, and that means that other countries do not have to hold the US dollar because they will not need it to pay for the oil. They will need another currency to pay for the oil. So if these countries do not need the currency, they will end up flooding back to the United States. We will see hyperinflation, and the currency will implode. And the central bankers and the United States, they realize this. So right now what they're doing is they're sending uh, let's just put it this way. They sold the puppet regime of Iraq 24 Apache helicopters to help with the fighting there. And of course, where did they get the money? Oh, that's right. The United States gives them aid, so they just gave the money back for the military equipment. And the Defense Security Cooperation Agency notified Congress today of a possible foreign military sale to Iraq of 64 Apache Longbow attack helicopters and associated equipment, parts, training, and logistical support for a cost of about $4.8 billion. Wow. They can do that, but they can't help out the people of America with the extended unemployment insurance. Interesting. And this proposed sale directly supports the Iraq government and serves the interests of the Iraqi people and the United States. This proposed sale supports the strategic interests of the United States by providing Iraq with critical capability to protect itself from terrorists and conventional threats, and it also the protection of the key oil infrastructure and platforms. And that's what they're really concerned about. They could care less about the people there. They're protecting the interest. They're protecting the U.S. dollar because they realize what would happen. And again, all across the Middle East, Africa, and the other countries, slowly eroding away. They are losing control, and the only way they know how to get control back is by killing and pushing the people of these countries back, and this is what we are seeing right now. Now, the U.S. is going to resume aid to the militants in Syria, and we understand that there's a Geneva II. Those talks are going to absolutely go nowhere because we know what the U.S. government wants. They want Assad out of Syria, and they're never going to agree to this. And right now, as negotiations between Syria officials and the country's foreign-backed opposition hit a deadlock over the issue of transfer of power, the United States has resumed deliveries of aid to the opposition. U.S. officials said Monday that the communications equipment and other items are being funneled for now only to non-armed oppositions, and through non-traditional chains of command, we are giving other weapons through the black market, so no one realizes this. And we know that's what they're doing. They're arming the opposition in ways that the congressmen have no idea that they're doing this. And this has been going on for 2 to 3 years right now. Now, Israel went ahead and bombed a Syrian base in Latakia airport in the North Country on Sunday. And Israeli security sources refused to confirm or deny the claims, of course. But last November, U.S. sources reported that Israel was behind an attack on a Russian SA-8 surface-to-air missile near the city, and they have done it again. And again, they're trying to provoke Syria into doing something. Plus, they are trying to get rid of all these defensive missile systems because we understand that a false flag event is going to occur. And right now, what they are doing is they are removing all these missiles and things. So when the strike does occur into Syria after the false flag event, it will be much easier for the U.S. to go in there, so they believe. Now, there is a new virus that's threatening the banking system. Cybersecurity researchers have detected a virus in online banking transactions, warning customers who swipe debit or credit cards at shopping counters, as well as companies who stock them. The name of the virus is Dexter, and we're seeing a lot of this. They are planting all of these malware, these viruses, into all the systems. There is a mini cyber attack going on right now, and this is all being prepared for the main event, the main cyber attack that will occur in the U.S., in Europe, and all the other countries. And we can see how this is all coming about here, because we have to remember Janet Napolitano way back when she was when she was retiring from her command of DHS. She told us not if, but when a cyber attack hits the financial institutions and the power infrastructure. She knows that this is already planned. She doesn't, know probably exactly the specific dates, but she knows it's planned and it is going to happen. Or maybe she does know the dates. But we can see how this is all being built up right now. Now, John Kerry was out there, and of course, we have to think about this for a second. The United States and other nations, and these are the private Western central banks, nations, are in a peace talk with Iran. And they're talking about peace, they're talking about, the nuclear weapons, everything's going nicely, and every single time the U.S. government, John Kerry, always has to mention about striking or attacking Iran if the deal is violated. And what he's really saying is if the central bankers cannot get hold of the central banks of Iran and put all the natural resources on the U.S. dollar, we're going to have to go in there with force and attack Iran. So Iran comes out and says, that they're warning that they're going to retaliate against the United States, and Iranian parliamentarians said Tehran could attack all 32 U.S. military bases in the Middle East and South Asia. In case of U.S. military attack against Iran, all the U.S. military bases in the regional countries will be turned into a slaughterhouse of the American forces. And this, they are building the propaganda up, because we have to see how this deal progresses. And right now, the Revolutionary Guard is warning Rouhani that the U.S. is trying a backdoor approach and trying to get into the central banks. The IMF is already visiting there, looking at their economy, looking at the banks. They want to set interest rates there, and we can see how this is starting to play out. And it seems like that they are definitely planning a false flag type of event if these talks do not go the way they want them to go. Now, there is a report out there saying that the Pentagon is incapable of detecting terrorist nukes. The U.S. government's ability to monitor emerging rogue nuclear threats are either inadequate or more often do not exist. Terrorist groups and states seeking nuclear weapons hostile to the U.S. and its allies do not appear to be bound by established norms nor deterred by traditional means. The task force also warned the pathways to proliferation are expanding to include networks of cooperation among nations and actors who would otherwise have little reason to do so. Meanwhile, the report noted that the growth in nuclear power worldwide offers more opportunity for leakage and or hiding small programs. Now, something I find very interesting. Iran right now is going to attend the nuclear talks in New York, and this is going to happen next month, and they're going to talk about the deal and things like that. And, they're saying that things are going well and everything's going fine. But I find something very interesting in New York. On the DHS training website, there is a improvised nuclear device diagnostics and response course, and this is a response to a suspected improvised nuclear device, and the enrollment is restricted to certain people. I have posted the links on the x22report.com site. This is going to be held on February 11th, and this is raising a red flag for me that something might occur. And we have to look at this, and this could be a potential false flag, because we have to understand, in my earlier report I said the medical shipments of medical radioactive material are not guarded at all. We've also heard from other government officials that Iran has the ability to create a dirty bomb at this time. Not saying that they will, which they most likely probably will not. They are building this up for some type of false flag. I put this on the potential false flag notification on the right side of the x22report.com site, and if you go there, that is there also. Now, I've been talking about Syria and how CNN has intel that Assad has chemical weapons and he has a cache of them and he hid them from the UN. And we also have reports of a terrorist attack in the Super Bowl where they're using the CO2 canisters to haul this gas in there and their explosive devices. Now, I don't know if this is actually going to happen, but it is a potential false flag. And we'll have to watch to see what happens there. But what I find very interesting is that there are all the warnings out in Sochi right now about terrorist attacks. And right now, terrorists with a Islamist group are promising to carry out suicide bomb attacks at the upcoming Olympic Games in Sochi next month, including chemical arms strikes. The Russian terror group, also known as Emirat Kavkaz, is believed to have jihadists in place within Sochi who are all ready to strike during the Games, set to begin on February 7th, and this is coming from a U.S. official with access to intelligence. Of course, the person is unnamed, as they always are. In a January 18th statement, Umar also threatened to conduct chemical weapons terrorist attack in Sochi. Islamist terrorists have not been known to use chemical weapons in attacks, but U.S. officials are taking the threat seriously. A senior U.S. official said the risk of terror attack at the Olympic Games is high and cautioned against travel there during the global sporting event. We've seen an uptick in threat reporting, said a senior Obama administration who briefed reporters on security threats Friday. The official said U.S. security officials are aware of the new threats from the jihadist group and reports of a female suicide bomber in Sochi. As many as 10,000 Americans are expected to attend the games there in Sochi. So we understand how this is all going to play out. The Geneva talks are not going well. Assad is not going to step down like the U.S. central bankers want him to. They've already tried striking Syria with a false flag event with the chemical weapons. These chemical weapons might be traced back to Syria to allow the U.S. to go in to Syria. This seems like they are setting this up for a false flag event. We already have warships in the Black Sea. We already have operations standing by in Jordan with troops being trained supposedly for Iraq. And all of this could be to get into Syria again. And again, we have many different events coming up. We have the Sochi Olympics. We have the Super Bowl. We have the Iranians coming in and this strange drill that's happening in New York, and the enrollment is restricted, and it just so happens to be for nuclear devices. So if we take all of this, there is a huge potential for a false flag event to occur, because the central bankers and the U.S. government realize they have to do something to get things working in their way, because they understand out in the Middle East they are losing control. They are losing control in Africa. They are losing control in the Ukraine. They are losing control in Thailand. And the only way to cover up everything that is going on is to prop up the U.S. dollar with some type of false flag event. They prepared all the bail-in documents. They are prepared. They are ready with the banks. They are ready with the malware and the viruses for a cyber attack. They are ready for terrorists and to scare all the people around the world to get us into some type of war. They've been positioning military assets all over the world. They've been demonizing China, saying they've been cyber attacking us. North Korea, they've been cyber attacking us. The Syrian Electronic Army, they've been cyber attacking us. And we can see how this is all being played out right now. This feels just like back in August when they did the alert saying that they had, communication of terrorist alert, and then we had the false flag event occur in Syria. It feels like we're doing the same, a repeat of what happened during the August time frame, and then Russia stepped in and the whole plan fell apart, and now they regrouped. They are ready, and they are pushing their agenda forward because their goal has always been the same: to get into Iran and Syria to prop up the U.S. dollar a little bit longer. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.